Lauren Michael Peters, and I'm here to teach you how to cook at home. Before we get started with all the fun recipes, I really want to start from the beginning. So kind of what do you need to know before you even try to make a single recipe? So we're gonna get started with the first thing you must have in your kitchen to get started cooking, and that is a chef's knife. So growing up, my parents had all these random knives in their kitchen. Half of them were not very sharp. But when I first started cooking professionally, that was the big investment that I needed to make. So one, I wouldn't get laughed at in an actual restaurant kitchen for using one of my home chef knives. But also really that helps so much with skill. Having a nice sharp knife is really going to make a huge difference. You do not need to go spend hundreds of dollars on a chef's knife. A lot of people think that. However, you do want to make a slight investment on this knife because this would be something that could last you for years and years and years. I still, to this day, which is 10 years ago that I started cooking professionally, still have the same chef's knife that I started with. Of course, I've grown my collection and got different types along the way, but I went to Williams-Sonoma and I just looked at all the knives. I didn't know where to start, and the best advice I got from some of the chefs that I first started working with was get what feels good in your hand. There are a lot of different handles that are big and bulky, and some are kind of teeny tiny and slim. It is all up to you and the size of your hand. I personally like a little bit of a thinner grip. Some of those bigger grips just make me concentrate on my grip too much. I just like something that just kind of easily fits in your hand. The very first thing that people like to do is put their finger right here. I did it at the beginning and people were like, no, 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 that's not how you do this. Do not put your finger here. You're going to just kind of rest the knife in your hand, lightly grip it. You don't want to squeeze it, but you don't want it too loose or it's going to fall around. Just firmly grip all of your fingers kind of tied like that in a knot, and that way you have complete control over the knife. Thing about the blade, so they come in all different shapes and sizes. Just start with a basic chef's knife. The bigger the chef's knife, they can get upwards, I think, of like a 12-inch chef knife. That's actually pretty big. I think mine are typically 10 inches. I think that that's just a good size for me. Again, if you're a big guy with big hands, then maybe that's something that you feel comfortable getting into. I like the 10-inch chef's knife. So again, just something simple, something that feels good in your hand. And then the other main point is make sure it's sharp. I will do a whole other video on how to properly sharpen your knives, but typically right out the gate, your knives should come pretty sharp. And most stores that you can purchase them for, you can actually get them sharpened there. Or again, I'll have a video for you guys here shortly on how to properly sharpen your knife. So first thing that we're gonna get started is not even diving right into a vegetable. We're just gonna start right here on our cutting board. This is kind of how I learned. A lot of people want to jump into just like chopping super fast. You gotta start slow. I promise, I promise, I promise. The speed and the accuracy will come with time. It is all about practice. So first things first is you're just kind of gently rest the knife on the board, and you're gonna practice a rocking motion, kind of like a boat. So the tip is gonna be kind of like pointed down. You're gonna push down and up. So again, kind of a rocking motion with your hand and at the board. And just sit there and get comfortable. Don't chop anything, just slice your board and get this really rocking motion, and that is how you're going to cut things. You're not going to just press down into them. That smashes the vegetable, does not slice the vegetable or whatever else you're cooking. So especially, this is going to kind of guide the knife on it being sharp all the way through. A lot of times if you just use the middle of the knife, that'll get dull and you'll have to use kind of the tip or the back part of your knife to get that sharpness. This, just keep it consistent, front down, and rock the boat like that. So the very first vegetable that I ever learned how to properly cut and dice and slice is a bell pepper. Chef Kent Rathbun was the very first chef that I ever worked for, and I had moved from Austin to Dallas to work at his restaurant Abacus. I started out just doing prep, had no idea what I was doing. Can't believe that let me in the door to work there, but I learned so much. And him and his wife Tracy were super kind and just brought me under their wing and wanted to teach me everything they knew, because they knew I hadn't gone to culinary school. That's another thing. It's okay, you don't have to have a proper culinary education. I still to this day have never taken a culinary course. So they brought me into their house one day and was like, listen, we have an event. We're just gonna let you chop our vegetables and get some practice. So they showed me very first how to chop a bell pepper. So I thought, since I learned that first, I'm gonna teach you that first. So a bell pepper a little bit different than chopping an onion, but this technique can actually be used on a lot of other vegetables as well. So the vegetable, this bell pepper has the stem end and kind of this end over here. So the very first thing is you're going to just slice off the ends. And you don't want to slice off too much, especially on the stem end. You can kind of, it has a little resistance from the stem. That's okay. And then you're going to pop the stem out. These, however, can totally be used, so do not throw them away. Just set them aside because I'm going to show you how to get a nice clean cut. So toss that and you'll have the middle of the bell pepper. So instead of just digging your hands in here and grabbing this out and then you're left with kind of these little grooves in the bell pepper, you're going to slice it, and you're basically, the technique is called flattening out a bell pepper. So you're gonna start and get the bell pepper nice and flat, and then you're just gonna pick a side that you feel comfortable and kind of get your fingers up here, and you're just gonna start to make a slice. Now, you're kind of like opening up this bell pepper. So then here, take this slice that you've sliced, you can kind of hold this other part here, and you're gonna press your knife down, like give it some weight to it. And you're just gonna start to kind of move the knife just equally as flat. We wanna keep it super straight. And just press down, and then kind of pull back the bell pepper as you get to the next part. Boom, this all comes out. You do not use this, so we can just go ahead and toss it. So now this is what we're left with, the bell pepper. Now, a lot of people, for most people at home, you do not need to get crazy and kind of shave this down more. These will be great. However, in kitchens, we like it to be super precise, and especially when you're trying to get a teeny, teeny, tiny dice like a brunoise, you will continue to actually kind of shave off some of this extra skin. And again, you don't have to do this, but I'm just purely showing you this. And it's just nice to practice for your knife skills. When I first started doing this, my knife would be like, and I would like chop into the pepper, chop up and chop. It was a hot mess. But guess what? It's okay, because if you're cooking at home, no one cares what it looks like. You're not in a restaurant. So again, you can chop this up, put it in salad, or today I'm just gonna toss it to the side and put it in my compost bin. So as you can see now, it kind of has a little bit smoother texture. It's a little bit thinner and more even around. Again, you don't have to start that, but I figured I might as well show you how to do that. So when I chop vegetables, you want to make them or cut them into manageable pieces. So everyone tries to tackle like these giant onions or these giant peppers. Break them down to the size that you feel comfortable working with. So for me, I don't need to kind of chop all of this at once, so I kind of divide it up in 2/3. So have these pieces. Now here, you will then start to work with it. So when you grab anything, when you're about to dice, slice, whatever, you want to practice the claw technique. I know this looks a little like overbearing, and I know when you look at chefs on TV, they're probably not doing this crazy claw, but they are. It's just not quite as obvious because they've learned over the years how to do it properly. So you want to grab things, and the point of that is if you have a flat hand and you're just pressing down the vegetable and you're chopping, what do you think's gonna go? Your fingertip, and trust me, it's not fun. I've done it, especially with a super sharp knife. It'll slice right through your tip and you'll have to go to the hospital. So if you have your hand in a claw form, the worst it's gonna do, I mean, you literally can put your knife right up against your knuckle, which is actually what you're supposed to do. And if those tips are kind of curled under, you're not gonna get to them. The worst thing that you're gonna do is if your knife kind of like slips to side, you might nick your knuckle. Not fun, but not the end of the world. You're not gonna go to the hospital because of it. So practice that a little bit. Just practice kind of doing that boat rocking motion right up against your knuckles. I know it's kind of scary, but as long as you have those tips nice and hidden, you're not going to slice them, I promise. So first thing we're gonna do is just slice this bell pepper. Everything that you want to do in cooking is when you dice or slice things, you want everything in uniform shape. So you don't want some slices this thick, some slices this thick, because then when you go to put them in the pan, they're gonna cook very differently. So the idea of dicing things in a very similar shape and size is going to be all about being able to cook evenly. So for here, we're just gonna slice. So get your fingers, and you're gonna do that rocking boat, and you kind of try to make that same size each and every time. This takes practice, and as you kind of pull back the knife, you're just gonna go over slightly and then press down. And just keep doing that. And that's how you actually, now if you get to this very end piece, some people are a little scared to do it themselves. That's okay. You can either kind of put that in the compost, throw it in a salad later, or if you feel really brave, again, tuck your fingertips as close as possible and then finish that last piece. So now you're gonna see these nice, beautiful little matchsticks. This is called a Julienne. So Julienne are just basically little matchsticks type pieces. You can do a Julienne on really most any vegetable. So that is kind of how we're gonna do those. We're gonna move those to the side, and next thing, we're going to dice them. So whenever you wanna look at kind of how thick your vegetable is, again with the bell pepper, it's kind of uneven, so it's not gonna be absolutely perfect every time, but you basically want to make your cuts the same width as the thickness of your vegetable, and that's gonna get those perfect, beautiful little squares. Again, if you're not that concerned about it, you don't have to make it perfect, but that'll again aid in helping of everything cooked nice and even. So I'm looking at kind of how thick my pepper is, and we are just going to make some long slices. So with here, you can use you always have to do the rocking motion. You can kind of gauge it with your eye, tuck those fingers, and then kind of pull back. And again, use your eye. You're trying to make the same width of slices each and every time. And this is such great practice at home. To move, you can either pick it up with your fingers, but sometimes all the little pieces wiggle on you. So another trick is get your knife super flat, just slide it underneath like that, and then kind of move it with your knife. And look at them, they stayed all nice together and beautiful, and you kind of it'll even them out with the tip of your knife. So now, the same width that you went that way, you're gonna do again to make the little dices. So again, you're trying to just make the dice the same size. Now I'm making these pretty small just for the sake of this video, but you can certainly make them bigger if you would like. So as you can see, kind of all these different pieces in here, nice, beautiful, small dice. So that is just a small dice of bell pepper. So those are two skills that I think you should definitely practice at home. So again, rewind, good knife, fits in your hand well, and sharp, 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 sharp. It'll make your life a million times easier. Does not have to be expensive. Vegetables, break them down to a manageable size. Make them the size that you feel comfortable working with. So in this instance, I did kind of 3 pieces like this. Slicing, using that rocking motion, practice, 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 that boat kind of rocking motion. Get those knuckles up there with that bear claw. Again, as time goes on, you'll be able to relax the bear claw and you won't even realize you're doing it. It'll just come naturally, but that's what professional chefs do it. I do it every single day. So again, practice that rocking motion, practice it on vegetables, practice your accuracy of the slices that you're doing and the dices that you're doing. Key with dicing is you always wanna make sure the strips and then the horizontals are the same size. Every vegetable you can't get to be exactly uniform in shape, that's okay, don't worry about it. Right now, we're just learning the basics. If you are not already subscribed, subscribe, 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 and also hit the bell button. What the bell button does, it actually alerts you every time I post a new video, where sometimes just subscribing only alerts you sometimes. So make sure you hit that bell button and everything I put up here will be alerted in your inbox. And yeah, follow along, and I look forward to teaching you guys more techniques. And once we get some basic techniques under our belt, we're gonna dive into some delicious recipes. I promise those are coming. All right, guys, thanks, bye.